Chapter 1837. To be able to hit his legs and save his life in this fog, how high was that person's cultivation level? And wasn't this the territory of the Temple of Darkness? How could someone else have snuck in? I'm fine. I was just walking when I realized that you were all gone. I walked around and heard some noise, so I came over. Fengjiu said as he smelled the scent in the air and walked forward about 2 or 3 meters. Come over quickly. There are corpses here. Hearing this, they immediately rushed forward. When they arrived at Fengjiu's side, they found several people lying on the ground. The corpses hadn't hardened yet. They were probably killed by the nascent soul cultivator earlier. There's something here. Fengjiu took out something from one of the people's arms and unfolded it. He couldn't help but smile. It's a map. Let me see. Lei Xiao stepped forward and took a look. He couldn't help but be delighted. It really is a map. Through the fog, he looked at the map. After a while, he pointed out. We're here now. We've walked half the distance. It seems that we're heading in the right direction. We're heading in the right direction. However, the most troublesome thing now is how to get out of this formation. Don't worry about that. Just follow me. Fengjiu smiled and said to the others, let's go. You won't get lost if you follow me. Hearing this, the others looked at each other. They didn't say anything and followed beside him. However, they didn't have much hope in their hearts. Unexpectedly, after walking for a while, they met the previous dozen or so people. You've come back again. A man was slightly surprised when he saw them. After all, it wasn't easy to walk in this formation. However, when he saw the young man in green, his eyes widened. It's you again. This young man lost it and actually found it again. This kid's luck was too good, wasn't it? It's me. Fengjiu smiled and narrowed his eyes. Do you want to come with us? The others had no choice but to follow them. Even if they couldn't get out, at least they wouldn't be separated. However, what they didn't expect was that in less than an hour, they actually walked out of the formation. Out. It can't be. One of the men looked behind him in disbelief, then looked at Fengjiu. For a moment, his gaze became complicated. Like I said, I also know about formations. Fengjiu smiled and squinted his eyes. He looked like a simple and honest person, but when they heard his words and looked at him, they were so angry that they wanted to beat him up. But thinking about it, he had clearly said it before. It was them who didn't believe him and consciously ignored him. How could they blame him now? In the end, they could only swallow their anger. Let's go. There's a water source up ahead. Lei Xiao pointed to the left. When the others heard this, they couldn't help but ask, how do you know? Everyone's gazes swept over him until they saw him take out a map. Their eyes narrowed involuntarily. Map? He actually got a map. They recalled that the people who had been crying for help in the formation seemed to have shouted that they had a map. Chapter 1838. Seeing this, Lei Xiao and the others stared at them with vigilance and took defensive stances. What do you want? Lei Xiao asked in a deep voice. At this moment, a few men walked out from the group. They glanced at Lei Xiao and the others and waved their hands to signal the others to pay attention to their surroundings. One of them said in a deep voice, you don't have to worry. We don't want to do anything to you. However, since you can come here, it can be seen that you are not ordinary people. There is something we want to cooperate with you. Hearing this, Lei Xiao and the others exchanged glances. Fengjiu, who was standing with Lei Xiao and the others, also glanced at those people. A trace of thought flashed through her eyes. Cooperate with what? Don't forget, we're just prey in their hands. We don't even know if we can leave this forest alive. Su-san snorted and stared at them with an unfriendly expression. Although these people were not bloodthirsty and cruel, they had been in here for a few months. They were all like ferocious beasts and it was hard to trust them. That's why we should cooperate. A fair-skinned man said and looked at the crowd. Are you really willing to give your lives to the people of the Temple of Darkness? Can't you even control your own life? Everyone was silent. Of course they were not willing, but what could they do now? Fengzhou's lips curled up slightly and a trace of interest flashed through his eyes. Interesting, what did these people want to do? Were they planning to revolt? They shouldn't be so stupid, right? With their strength, they couldn't escape. Moreover, the Ghost Elder wasn't easy to fool. It would be very difficult for them to escape. Moreover, the poison in each of them couldn't be cured by ordinary people. What do you mean by cooperating? Lei Xiao asked in a deep voice while paying attention to them and guessing their intentions. The fair-skinned man exchanged glances with the people beside him before he said, "There's a piece of news that you probably don't know. Those who leave this place alive will be kept behind to be nurtured. And this nurturing isn't just simple nurturing, it's nurturing with medicinal pills to rapidly increase their strength and combat strength." The fair-skinned man paused for a moment before continuing, "Furthermore, other than some of the spies that will be sent to the 4 great sects, the rest will be nurtured as elites. In other words, as long as we pass this test, as long as we can withstand the subsequent tests, we will not only become stronger with the help of the pills, but also have a chance to survive. And what we want to cooperate with you is to help each other and minimize the deaths of our brothers as much as possible. When our strength increases, we'll join forces and escape from here. As for the poison in our bodies, I've heard from a friend that there's a ghost doctor who can bring the dead back to life and is proficient in medicine and poisons. When the time comes, we can find this person and ask him to cure us." Hearing this, Fengzhou couldn't help but be slightly surprised. She sized up this fair-skinned man. This person actually knew about the ghost doctor? Furthermore, where did he get all this information from? Where did you get this information from? Pai San asked the question she wanted to ask. Chapter 1839. When everyone saw the unnatural expression on his face, they all found it strange. If you have something to say, just say it. What's so awkward about a man? Moreover, they were all men here too. How did you get this information? Lei Xiao also asked, staring at the fair man. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't be shy. Who's being shy? The fair man glanced at him unhappily, coughed lightly, and said, I got this information from Elder Ghost's woman. Hearing this, everyone was startled. That woman? What do you mean? Even if she knew, why would she tell you this information? The fair man's face flushed slightly, as if he was holding his breath, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. Seeing this, Fengzhou couldn't help but blink. Her mind moved as she stared at the fair man, and her voice had a trace of surprise. You her? Who that woman? The fair man said hurriedly. Seeing that everyone was staring at him, he coughed lightly. That woman wanted to me, so I beat her at her own game. I got a lot of information from her, and this information is definitely true. Hearing this, the crowd nodded in understanding. If that was the case, then it made sense, especially since this man was fair and clean, and his appearance wasn't bad. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a pretty boy, and he was indeed much better than Elder Ghost. However, you mentioned the ghost doctor earlier. Is this person's medical skills really that good? Lei Xiao asked again. Yes, according to my friend, there's no poison in this world that the ghost doctor can't cure. The fair man said with certainty, clearly believing in his friend. Fengzhou touched her face, and it was a little hot. She was standing here, but these people didn't know and praised her in front of her. Yes, she was a little embarrassed. Hearing this, everyone gathered together to discuss, and finally decided to take a gamble. Thus, after a simple introduction, the 50 to 60 people continued to walk forward according to the map. Along the way, Fengjiu found that the people in the original group of 30 people seemed to have been reorganized, and no one had any bad intentions. It was the same for the dozen people on their side. Even if they encountered danger along the way, they passed through safely. In addition, among these people, there were people who were good at various fields, and they were also very determined. They were a group of good seedlings. The water source is in front. Let's all rest up there. The fair man, Hao Juanhao, said, pointing at a place not far ahead. You have a map too. Lei Xiao glanced at them and asked. There is one. They nodded and glanced at Lei Xiao. The other one is with you, right? At that time, they had seen the maps that they had taken out. They did not expect that both maps would fall into their hands. That's right. Lei Xiao responded, and didn't say anything else. When they reached the water source, everyone sat down to rest. After a while, a few of them looked around vigilantly. Su San and Hixing looked at each other, then got up and walked around. Fengjiu saw this and walked beside them. When they came to a place a little further ahead, they saw that there were people who were one step ahead of them. Chapter 1840. They had a map in hand and had come here in a group. However, this person was alone and had arrived at the water source one step ahead of them. From this, it could be seen that this person was not ordinary. That person noticed their presence and glanced at them, but it was only a glance before he shifted his gaze away, no longer paying attention to them. Instead, he took out a bamboo tube cut from somewhere and filled it with water, preparing to continue on his journey. Seeing this, Su San and Hixing both called out to him, "Brother, wait a moment." The two of them chased after him. Feng Zhou, on the other hand, was sizing up the man without leaving a trace. She couldn't hide the admiration in her eyes. This man was quite capable. He looked to be in his 30s and his clothes were stained with blood. He held a blade in his hand at all times. It could be seen that he had killed many people along the way. Most of the people that Elder Ghost sent here were nascent soul cultivators. This person was able to defeat a nascent soul cultivator by himself, which was already an extraordinary feat. What are you doing? The person narrowed his eyes and turned around. His killing intent was terrifying. Seeing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile. This person's aura was not inferior to the 8 Phoenix guards by her side at all. His killing intent was naturally revealed. He hadn't even made a move yet, but he was already able to intimidate the other party. She didn't think that there would be hidden dragons and crouching tigers among the captured people. We'll form a group of a few dozen people. Brother, do you want to come with us? That way, we'll be able to look after each other. Su San invited. This kind of person was definitely worth recruiting. No need. The man directly refused and walked away. In a short while, he disappeared in front of their eyes. I recognize this person. He's the man who killed a nascent soul cultivator. Last time, he caused quite a commotion. This person is very promising. I didn't think that not only would his battle prowess be good, his sense of direction would also be good. He's not simple to be able to get here without a map. Su San withdrew his gaze and spoke with an unconcealable tone of regret. They felt that it was a pity that they couldn't recruit such a person into their team. Fengjiu, on the other hand, didn't say anything. He just listened and watched quietly. Then, he walked back with them and found a place to sit down. He listened to Ming San and Ming San tell everyone about their encounter with the man just now. Alright, let's go after the rest. It won't be too late to rest after we leave the forest. As Lei Xiao spoke, she stood up and let everyone set off again. The group quickened their pace and moved forward. On the morning of the third day, just as they were about to pass through the forest, Fengjiu, who had been invisible all this time, suddenly stood out. I think we can split up here. His sudden words startled everyone. What do you mean? Pai-san asked. 50 to 60 people's gazes fell on Fingzhou. Obviously, they didn't know what he meant. Or rather, no one thought too deeply about it. They didn't guess what those people were thinking when they saw them appear together. Fingzhou glanced at them and said in a voice that wasn't too loud or soft, I think they captured us and want to train us to be spies. They definitely don't want us to be too involved with each other. It's not easy for them to control us and it's easy for something to happen. Chapter 1841. From this moment onwards, even if we see each other, we'll pretend not to know each other. Lei Xiao immediately said to the group, even if they find out that we've formed a team, it doesn't matter. However, once we reach this place, we'll split up and act like before. Okay. The group replied. They knew that this was the best way to go. Thus, they formed a team. Some of them walked first, while others walked slowly. They split up and walked separately. Fingzhou naturally walked with Lei Xiao and the others. Hao Ju and Hao also walked with them. They only walked out of the forest at noon. However, before they left, the man they had met before was already sitting there and waiting for them. Beside him was the Ghost Elder, as well as a few Fairy Realm cultivators and a few nascent Soul Realm cultivators. When they saw them walk out, those people glanced at them and sized them up. When the Ghost Elder saw that the green-robed youth had actually managed to walk out alive, he couldn't help but look at him in surprise. He secretly sized him up. He saw that the youth's face was pale, his robes were torn, and his hair was messy. Compared to when he had first seen him, he was no longer clean and handsome. After glancing at him, the Ghost Elder moved his gaze away and continued to wait with narrowed eyes. The group also sat down in a corner and didn't say anything to each other. A few more people arrived one after another. They were all the people they had formed a team with before. When they arrived, they all sat down with exhausted expressions and gasped for breath. Only when the sun had set did the spectral elder open his eyes. After glancing at the remaining people, he merely said, "Bring them all back." Afterwards, he left on his sword Qi. Fingzhou and the others were brought back by a few Fairy Realm cultivators using flying devices. When they returned to the plaza, the group stood in a circle. They didn't know what would happen next. At this moment, they were still somewhat nervous. Eat. One of the Fairy Realm cultivators waved his sleeve. Pills flew in front of the group and landed in their outstretched hands. Fingzhou picked up a pill and smelled it. Seeing that it was a fasting pill, he swallowed it. In this place, there was no need to count on meat. Just having fasting pills was already good enough. After everyone swallowed the pills, they felt that the hunger in their stomachs had finally disappeared. There was also a sense of satiation. They couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Only the heavens knew how much strength they had consumed in these 3 short days. Take these people away. We'll gather at dawn tomorrow. The Celestial Ascendant ordered. A few nascent soul cultivators then took the 70 to 80 people away. Yes, of the 378 people, only a dozen or so came out in the last 3 days except for the 50 to 60 people in Fingzhou's team. Therefore, the total number of people who passed was only 70 to 80. They were brought to 3 large bunk rooms. Each bunk room could sleep about 30 people. After entering the room, they were given a set of black tight-fitting clothes. In the future, all of you will live here. Turn left at the exit and you'll find a place to bathe. Change your clothes and gather here tomorrow. After giving his instructions, the nascent soul cultivator turned around and left. Chapter 1842. This was a man. This was a man. At this moment, she really wanted to know how these people would react when they found out that she was a girl. She caught a glimpse of a man mumbling that his clothes were stained with something. After taking off his clothes, he even wanted to take off his remaining underwear. Seeing this, she hurriedly called out to stop him. "Uncle over there, wait, wait!" Fengjiu shouted. Once she said this, the 20 people in the room all looked at her. The bearded man who was taking off his underwear heard this and turned to look at Fengjiu. "You're calling me?" He pointed at himself. "Yes, I'm calling you." Just as she replied, the bearded man glared at her and said with dissatisfaction, "I just haven't trimmed my beard for a few months. How can I be worthy of being called an uncle? I'm only 23 years old this year." Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. "All right. Big brother, don't take off your underwear. Take it off when you shower." Hearing this, some of the people only laughed, some of them were busy with their own things, thinking that this youth must have never been in a common bed before. He didn't know that they were all men who were more casual and didn't pay much attention to details. "What does it matter if we're all men?" the bearded man said disapprovingly. "What I have, you have too. Why are you embarrassed?" As he said this, he wanted to take off his underwear. Just as Fengjiu was about to speak, she saw the man swiftly take off his pants. Seeing this, she sighed softly and glanced at the bearded man before silently averting her eyes. It wasn't that she was embarrassed to look, but she felt that this person definitely wouldn't have the face to appear in front of her in the future. The shared room could accommodate 30 people, but there were only 25 people here. Fengjiu also chose a seat in the corner, so she didn't notice who was sitting next to her. When she came back from her shower, she couldn't help but be surprised when she saw the person sitting there. It was Su-san. Seeing Fengjiu enter, the others' gazes also fell on him, sizing him up. They saw that the originally green-robed youth had changed into a black robe. Although his appearance was not particularly outstanding, there was still something different about him. After putting on the black clothes, the youth's originally thin and weak body no longer looked as thin and small as before. Of course, compared to these robust men, it was incomparable. However, she was still valiant and very dazzling. "This is the waist tag that those people sent over just now. There is a number written on it. It is our code name when we are being trained here." Pai-san passed a tag to her. Fengjiu took a look and couldn't help but smile. 9. What a coincidence. "Yes, after Lei Xiao and I took one, we also took one for you. The one in the corner over there is number 1. Pei-san signaled Fengjiu to look over. The person sitting cross-legged on the other side of the bunk was the man they met in the forest. "Go to sleep. What's there to talk about?" A shout came from outside. Everyone inside stopped talking and went back to their beds to rest. Chapter 1843. Fengjiu glanced at the snake pit in front of him, then at the 70 to 80 men who had been brought over. Some of them had pale faces and large beads of cold sweat on their foreheads. Some had dark expressions and pursed their lips as they stared at the snake pit in front of them with tense bodies. Moving his gaze away from those people, Fengjiu's gaze landed on the fairies and nascent soul cultivators at the side. He slowly lowered his gaze. Was he trying to push those people into the snake pit? Those people were all captured from the outside. They weren't unforgivably evil people. From the fact that they were able to survive in the forest, it could be seen that they had some ability. However, if these people were to be killed just like that, it would be a bit too much. As the thought flashed through her mind, she sighed in her heart. How could the people from the Temple of Darkness have any humanity? Perhaps human lives were no more than ants to them. Not only would killing these people shock them, but it would also show their ruthlessness and bloodthirstiness. After this scene, even those who were disloyal would have to consider whether or not they had the ability to completely escape from their hands. Otherwise, if they fell into their hands, it would be a fate worse than death. Everyone was silent. The spectral elder walked over from behind. The seductive woman was no longer by his side. This was because the woman had already been killed by him when she tried to seduce Hao Juanhao in the forest. The spectral elder walked to the front. His cold, viper-like gaze swept past the people in tight robes. When it landed on Fengzhou, it was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but it lingered for a while before moving away. He looked at the men with tense bodies and his cold, unhurried voice rang out, "I said before that those who can't pass the test will die. Moreover, they will die very miserably." With that, he waved his hand and the two nascent soul cultivators escorted two pale-faced men forward. No, the two men's legs went soft, and their pants were wet from extreme fear. Their faces turned pale as they looked at the snake pit. There were many kinds of death. However, this kind of death was the most difficult to accept. They weren't afraid of death. However, they were afraid of this kind of pain and death that came from the heart. Push them away. Elder Ghost's voice was filled with viciousness, as if he didn't treat the two of them as humans. No, don't, help, The two of them were pushed into the snake pit by the nascent soul cultivator. As soon as they fell into the snake pit, the poisonous snakes coiled around them tightly. Not long after, Jian Jing's shrill screams weakened. The two of them were motionless, their faces turning black and purple. Their bodies were covered with bite marks from the poisonous snakes. Fengzhou's gaze moved slightly and landed on Senior Gue. He secretly suppressed the urge to kill. Elder Gue did not notice Fengzhou's gaze. Instead, he looked at the people who were standing. He looked at them and said, "Becoming the food of a poisonous snake, enduring everything before death. I believe that you will not like that feeling." The ghost elder laughed sinisterly. He stared at the 70 to 80 people and said, "Kneel down and save me. Perhaps I can let you go and give you a chance to live." As soon as he said this, more than 30 of the 70 to 80 people fell to their knees and kowtowed to him. Chapter 1844. Pleas for mercy rang out in the plaza. However, Elder Gue's gaze didn't even look at them. Instead, it landed on the 40 or so men who were still standing ramrod straight. He asked with interest, "You guys aren't afraid of death?" One of the men snorted, "Even if we're afraid of death, we won't beg for mercy. If you want to kill us, then do as you please. Isn't it just death? What's the big deal?" Another man also spoke. There wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. Another man with a stocky build also spoke loudly, "We already knew that we would die when we came out, but we didn't think that we would die to these little snakes." How depressing. Fengzhou looked at these people and then looked at Elder Gue. His heart moved. It seemed like these people really did have a chance of survival. Sure enough, the spectral elder walked forward and swept his gaze over them. In the end, he nodded and said, "Not bad, your courage isn't bad. Since you've become a member of our Dark Knight Temple, you can't be a coward." When these people heard this, they all frowned and stared at him as if they didn't understand. Elder Ghost stared at them and revealed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Although you guys are a bit weaker than those people, I've taken a liking to your backbone. I'll spare your lives. I believe that even if you guys aren't nurtured as elites, you'll still be useful in the future." After saying this, he looked at the two nascent soul cultivators on the side, "Take them down and send them to Elder Sunday. Have him arrange their training." "Yes." The two nascent soul cultivators responded and shouted at the 40 or so people, "Come over here." After those people left, Elder Gue glanced at the 30 or so people kneeling on the ground. His face was filled with disgust. Push away all of them on the ground in fear of the snakes. He looked down on people without courage. I'll fight it out with you." The people kneeling on the ground had no other choice. They could only get up and throw themselves at Elder Ghost with all their might. They thought that even if they died, they would drag someone down with them. From the moment the first person leaped up, the others also leaped up and threw themselves at Elder Ghost and the others like they couldn't cover their ears. Elder Ghost's eyes narrowed as a bloodthirsty killing intent flashed through his eyes. Just as he was about to make a move, a black figure instantly shot out and kicked away the person that pounced at him before blocking in front of him. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes as he stared at the back of the black-clothed youth. His eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. "Kill them." Fengzhou's voice rang out, causing the people dressed in martial attire to recover from their shock. Seeing those people rushing forward, they also quickly rushed out. Crack. Ah. Yes. Muffled groans and the sound of bones breaking rang out in the square. Low shouts and miserable cries rang out, making it seem rather chaotic. The smell of blood spread through the air. Not long after, the entire square quieted down, and there were 30 or so corpses on the ground. After the people dressed in martial attire dealt with those people, they all lined up according to their numbers. Although they didn't show anything on their faces, every single one of them was slightly shaken in their hearts. At this moment, the ascendants on the side finally returned to their senses. They glanced at the corpses on the ground, then glanced at the people lined up in groups, and their eyes flickered slightly. Chapter 1845. Why did you kill them? The spectral elder's voice was very soft, as if he was afraid of scaring him. There was also a trace of curiosity in his voice, as if he really wanted to know why he did that. Fengzhou's body trembled slightly at this moment. He raised his head and looked at the spectral elder, because we're already part of the Temple of Darkness. Naturally, we couldn't just watch them attack you. At that moment, I didn't think of anything else. I just charged forward in a daze. His voice grew softer and softer. However, when the spectral elder heard his words, he revealed a satisfied expression. Very good. It's good that you have such self-awareness. The spectral elder looked at them and said, from the moment you put on the robes given to you by the Temple of Darkness, you're part of the Temple of Darkness. I don't want wood, and I don't want wooden puppets that only follow orders. I want people who can change flexibly. Only this way, when you go out on missions in the future, you can better complete the orders given by the higher-ups. You're number 9. The spectral elder glanced at the badge on Fengzhou's waist. Yes, Fengzhou replied and lowered his head. He was so respectful that no one could find fault with him. Although your strength is the weakest among these people, you're quite smart. I find you pleasing to the eye. How about this? The spectral elder's voice paused and he glanced at everyone. I originally wanted to choose a captain from among you today, but seeing how things have turned out, I'll choose you. Me? Fengzhou stuttered and asked in astonishment. No, it'll be you. The spectral elder nodded in a good mood. Clearly, the scene of Fengzhou charging forward earlier had greatly pleased him. But, I'm the weakest. She said softly. If you're weak, then think of a way to get up. There will be tests and training every once in a while. If you're still this weak at that time, then I'll kill you first before anyone else does anything. The spectral elder's eyes narrowed as a trace of viciousness appeared on his face. Yes. Fengzhou replied, but he didn't feel any pressure in his heart. Was she weak? Come and try. If she wanted to make a move, no one here was her match. Lei Xiao, Su San, and the others narrowed their eyes. They were thinking that if number 9 hadn't killed those people would have suffered the pain of being bitten by the poisonous snakes. They had helped them by killing them. However, was number 9 really like what he said, or was he just like what they thought? They suppressed the thoughts in their hearts and followed one of the fairy realm cultivators through an underground secret tunnel. They arrived at the dungeon. As soon as they entered, the aura of death rushed towards them, causing their originally relaxed hearts to be on edge once again. The people locked up here are all people who are going to be executed. Today is the first day, So your mission is to kill those people inside, the fairy realm cultivator said coldly. He opened the last stone door and let them in. No one asked because they all knew that the people inside were not simple. Otherwise, they would not have allowed so many people to enter at once. The only thing they could be sure of was that no matter how many people there were, their strength was definitely above theirs. Then don't we have weapons? One of them couldn't help but ask. Chapter 1846. Hearing this, everyone could only walk forward. After they entered, the stone door behind them closed with a rumble. The originally clear line of sight also became dim at this moment, with only a few faint rays of light coming from the illumination on the wall. Feng Jiu and Swan San were walking in front. However, suddenly, someone squeezed in from behind and knocked her to the side with force. At the same time, it was accompanied by a low curse. "Lackey! Get lost! Don't block my way!" A man scolded and glanced disdainfully at Feng Jiu. He strode forward, but at this moment, his shoulder was grabbed by someone behind him. "How can you say that?" Pai San grabbed the man's shoulder and glared at him. "Who are you calling a lackey?" "I'm talking about this kid." "What's wrong? Isn't he a lackey?" The man also turned around. This place was sealed, without the people from the Temple of Darkness watching. He could be bold and directly pointed at Feng Jiu's nose and scolded. Feng Jiu looked at the finger pointing at her and her eyes flashed. She had the urge to break that finger. However, in the dim light, she only licked the corner of her mouth and suppressed that urge. She silently moved her eyes away and paid attention to the movements inside. "Watch your words." Pai San glared at the man. Perhaps he felt that Feng Jiu was young and had saved him before, so he wanted to protect him. Naturally, he would not allow him to be bullied. "How did I say that? Tell me, am I wrong? Didn't this kid deliberately rush forward to save Elder Ghost to curry favor with those people? What is he if not a lackey?" The man said disdainfully, his eyes still staring at Feng Jiu. He felt that he was guilty and did not dare to talk back to him. Lei Shao frowned and said, "Stop arguing. We're here on a mission. We don't know what dangers lie ahead. How can we quarrel here?" Lei Shao glanced at the man and said, "Besides, I don't think there was anything wrong with number 9 stepping forward. If he hadn't rushed forward, those people would have died even more miserably." Hearing this, the others fell silent. Evidently, they had already thought of this point. Thus, they didn't say much about number 9's actions at that time. However, they were still a little surprised by his sharp senses and reaction. Even more so, they didn't think that he would help those people at that moment, killing them and giving them a quick death. TSK. Who knew what he was thinking at that time? Didn't he say it himself? What did he mean by treating him as a member of the Temple of Darkness? He's just a lackey. It was obvious that the man looked down on Feng Jiu, and he was angry that Feng Jiu was appointed as their captain, so he insulted him and called him a henchman. "Let's go. Let's go ahead and take a look." Feng Jiu glanced at the man and ignored him. Instead, he pulled Pei San forward. Lei Shao didn't say anything when she saw this. She walked past the man and followed Feng Jiu forward. The people behind them naturally followed. At the very back, the man who shared a bunk with Feng Jiu's group also glanced at the man who insulted Feng Jiu when he passed by him before walking forward. Seeing that everyone was standing on the kid's side, the man was a little dissatisfied and resentful. He gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath before quickly following. Chapter 1847. When Feng Jiu and the rest arrived inside, they realized that the dungeon was as big as the plaza above. Furthermore, they did not see a single person along the way. It was clearly said that there were demonic cultivators who had committed crimes and were waiting to die, but now, they did not see a single person. Everyone could not help but become vigilant. When they also walked in groups of two, with their backs facing each other as they paid attention to their surroundings. Ha! Suddenly, a fierce shout was heard, and a figure in tattered clothes rushed out. In the next moment, dozens of figures in tattered clothes rushed out once again and fiercely pounced on Fingzhou and the rest. Their speed and aura were like fierce beasts that had been starved for a long time, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Although neither side had any weapons in their hands, at this moment, murderous intent rose, and a cold aura caused the entire dungeon to become even more sinister. Low shouts, the sound of fists colliding, and the sound of palms slashing through the air rang out in the dungeon. Ah! Lei Xiao reached out and twisted, breaking the head of a demonic cultivator. A cracking sound was heard, followed by a shrill scream, mixed in with the chaos. Crack! Ah! Kill you! Kill you all! Go to hell! Ah! In the chaotic sounds of battle, the fallen corpses were stepped on, and some were tripped by the corpses. When they fell to the ground, another person pounced on them and waved his fist, attacking the fatal points of the other party's body. The sound of a chest shattering was heard, and the person who was hit in the sternum spat out blood. His body trembled, and in the end, his eyes were filled with unwillingness as he breathed his last. Hiss! A man in black took a deep breath. The clothes on his arm were torn, and there were a few bloody scratches on his arm. The wound looked as if he had been scratched by a wild beast, and it was a ghastly sight. Hiss! It hurts so much. The man who was scratched was the bearded man, the man who had taken off his underpants last night. He did not care about the wound on his arm, and waved his fist, which contained the aura of spiritual power, and landed on the other party's head with a bang. Bang! The heavy blow caused the man's head to tilt, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The bearded man turned around and attacked another person. At this moment, while he was dealing with the person in front of him, the person behind him held a sharpened white bone and fiercely stabbed it at the back of the bearded man's head. When Fingzhou kicked a demonic cultivator away, he happened to catch a glimpse of this scene. Seeing that the bearded man's life, on the line, he immediately moved his palm, and a silver needle. The demonic cultivator with the sharp white bone in his hand screamed and grabbed his trembling wrist. Just as he was about to attack again, another demonic cultivator threw him and sent him flying. The sharp white bone in his hand pierced his heart. This was because the thin and weak youth had turned around and attacked, and sent a golden core cultivator flying. Furthermore, he had killed him with a single palm strike. He was dumbfounded by her nimble movements and beautiful movements. Wasn't this kid in the Foundation establishment stage? How could he send a golden core cultivator flying with a single palm strike? Chapter 1848. He quickly calmed himself down and attacked the demonic cultivators. With danger approaching, he could not care less about the kid. Beside Fingzhou, Pai San was also secretly shocked when he saw Fingzhou's skills. How was this the strength of a Foundation establishment cultivator? Could it be that he was hiding his strength? But if he was hiding his strength, why didn't Elder Ghost and the others notice? Although he was shocked, he did not show it on his face, nor did he ask any questions. Everyone had secrets. He did not say anything because he did not want them to know. However, he had been hiding his strength before. Why did he reveal his skills here? Was he not afraid that they would find out? Not only did Pai San and the bearded man notice it, but Lei Xiao and the others also noticed it. They originally wanted to pay more attention to number 9 and help him if he was in danger. They did not expect to see him attack so fiercely. They were all people who had been outside before. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that number 9's skills were steady. Moreover, his attacks were fatal. He was definitely not simple. Number 1's gaze also swept past Fingzhou. Just as he was about to look away, he saw the man who had called Fingzhou a lackey use a sneak attack while attacking the demonic cultivator, fiercely knocking the youth who was fighting the demonic cultivator away. Seeing this, he frowned. In a flash, he stepped forward and kicked the man who had used a sneak attack. Bang! Ah! The man groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood as he crashed to the ground. He supported himself against the wall and stood up. His eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at number one who had attacked him. At this moment, Fingzhou sent the demonic cultivator flying with his palm as he was knocked away. At the same time, he spun around and landed steadily on the ground. When he turned around, he saw that the man who had knocked into him was kicked away by number one. Seeing this, she glanced at number one and then shifted her gaze to the man who had stood up angrily. At this moment, most of the demonic cultivators had been killed. The remaining ones had died under the attacks of the crowd. In this battle, their side had lost one or two people, and many of them had suffered different degrees of injuries. At this moment, everyone was looking at the scene in front of them. "What's going on?" one of the men asked. He was somewhat puzzled. Why did his own people start fighting? Number one narrowed his eyes and stared at the man who stood up after being kicked by him. He didn't say anything. He made a move in the dark, trying to kill number 9. Lei Xiao frowned. He had also seen that scene. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. They all looked at the man. So that's how it is. He was probably unconvinced. Only then did he want to kill that young man. Just as everyone was thinking about this, they saw a young man in a tight suit walk up to the man, step by step. "Do you want to kill me? I'll give you a chance." At this moment, the expression on Feng Zhou's face was indifferent. He didn't have his usual naivety and stupidity. His entire person looked different. His entire body was filled with a dangerous aura, causing everyone's expression to change. They were a little surprised. Only the man's eyes were covered with hatred. When he saw the young man walking up to him fearlessly, he immediately let out a low growl. He clenched his fist and punched out. That punch contained 100% of the strength of a golden core cultivator. The sharp chi blade carried a terrifying force and struck out at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he wanted to kill his opponent with one punch. Chapter 1849. Let him deal with it himself. Lei Xiao placed a hand on Su San's shoulder and shook her head. When Su San saw this, he stepped back and stood there, watching. In the next moment, the youth caught the man's fist and turned it around with a flip of his hand. Crack! Ah! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. The man's knee was kicked, and he fell to his knees and screamed in pain. "What I hate the most is being plotted against." A gentle voice rang out coldly. Everyone saw the youth reach out and grab the burly man's throat, twisting his neck. Seeing the burly man's face turn red and pale, and finally being thrown to the ground without any signs of life, everyone could not help but gulp. Their gazes towards the youth were filled with a trace of horror. A Foundation establishment cultivator? Or perhaps a golden core cultivator? He was actually able to easily neutralize 100% of the man's golden core power and killed him so easily. Could it be that his strength was not just at the golden core level? As this thought flashed through their minds, everyone felt a jolt in their hearts. One after another, thoughts sprang up in their minds. If he wasn't just a golden core cultivator, then why was he here? Why had he been captured? Why hadn't the Ghost Elder and the others noticed him? Could it be that he was stronger than the Ghost Elder and the others? Why are you all looking at me? The youth turned around and smiled, revealing a simple and innocent expression. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that this youth could be so terrifying when he was ruthless. Ahem. Let's go. Lei Xiao coughed softly. She composed herself and walked forward with the crowd. Number 1 glanced at Fingzhou, then walked forward without saying anything. Only the bearded man walked up to Fengzhou's side and sized him up from time to time, but he didn't ask anything. As the crowd continued to walk forward, the ghost elder was sitting with a few fairy realm cultivators outside. They were discussing something. Aside from those who died, we didn't find any other suspicious person. We've been guarding the forest for 2 days, but we still haven't found anything. Could it be that they've snuck in and were discovered by our people, so they escaped? A fairy realm cultivator looked at the ghost elder and said, "If that's the case, then it's one thing. I'm just worried that there might be someone hiding among us." Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself. He went through each and every one of them in his mind, but he still didn't find anyone suspicious. After all, it was not easy to escape their eyes and move around under their noses. Moreover, the people who were caught were mostly rogue cultivators. They were not really capable people. If they were really capable, they would not have been caught by them. I don't think there's anything suspicious about the people we left behind. That person killed so many of our nascent soul cultivators, why would he still dare to stay here? Another person said. He felt that the person who killed their people should have already left. The ghost elder thought deeply for a while, then said, "Pass down the order to increase our vigilance. If something like this happens again, no one will be able to bear the consequences." "Yes, we understand." The few of them replied and left. Chapter 1850. "Men," he shouted towards the outside. "Ghost Lord." A demonic cultivator walked in and bowed respectfully. "Find me a woman," he said with a gloomy voice. The demonic cultivator's eyes flickered when he heard that. He said, "Ghost Lord, the female cultivators from the all-pleasure sect that we captured last time are still here. Their appearances and figures are all first-rate. Why don't I bring them over?" All-pleasure sect. Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. "Then what are you standing there for? Go." "Yes, yes," the demonic cultivator replied and hurried out. Not long after, the demonic cultivator brought 2 beautiful women with enchanting figures over. Perhaps it was because he had already told the 2 of them that the 2 women didn't have a trace of dissatisfaction on their faces. After entering, they even bowed in a proper manner. "Ghost Lord." The 2 women bent their knees and bowed. Their thin clothes were unable to hide their alluring bodies. In particular, when they lowered their heads, they revealed a charming and enchanting expression. This caused Elder Ghost's eyes to light up as he revealed a satisfied smile. "Come here," he called out as his naked gaze lingered on the 2 women. The 2 women responded in a coquettish voice, and then they walked forward and leaned into Elder Ghost's embrace. The demonic cultivator tactfully retreated when he saw this. However, even after he walked out, he could still hear the sounds of ecstasy from inside. When Fengzhou and the others came out, it was already noon the next day. Elder Ghost and the others were slightly surprised when they saw so many people come out alive after those people went in. After all, the people locked up in the death row prison were all savage people. There was no need to even talk about their strength. They originally thought that having a dozen or so people come out alive would already be a lot, but they never expected. They actually only lost around 4 or 5 people after going in. As for the people standing in front of them, although each of them had different degrees of injuries, it was undeniable that they had survived after going through trials and tribulations. Number 9. Elder Ghost's gaze swept past everyone and landed on the young man at the front. "Yes." Fengzhou stepped forward without hesitation. The spectral elder stared at the young man in front of him. He could see that the young man was indeed growing. At the very least, there was no longer the timidity and fear between his brows like when they first met. His body also faintly gave off a vicious aura. He was very satisfied with this. "Why don't you tell me why you only lost a few people after going in? There are even nascent soul cultivators in there. How did you survive?" Reporting to Elder Ghost, your subordinates originally only cared about their own matters. However, as soon as we entered, 2 of us died. Especially towards the end, all of us were covered in injuries. At that time, your subordinates saw that I could not fight against them alone. In order to survive, I had everyone work together. In the end, we were lucky enough to survive." Hearing the young man's words, Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and swept his gaze over everyone. Only then did he wave his hand and indicate, "Bring out the weapons and let them choose. Prepare to enter the next stage of training." "Yes." The demonic cultivators behind him replied. Not long after, they brought out many weapons. "Choose one for each of you during this period of training. Once you've all passed and become spies, there will be magic tools for you to protect yourselves." The demonic cultivator stared at everyone as he spoke. Chapter 1851. Fengjiu looked at all kinds of weapons and finally picked up a dagger. When he opened it, the dagger shone with a sharp, cold light. Thus, he took the dagger and retreated. Elder Ghost watched from the side. To them, the most suitable weapons were sabers and swords. Short weapons like daggers, axes, and scimitars weren't suitable for them. After all, if 2 people were to fight, the one with a long weapon would naturally have an advantage. He looked around and saw that most of the people had chosen either a sword or a saber. Only number 9 had chosen a dagger. He couldn't help but ask, "Why did you choose a dagger when everyone else has chosen a saber or a sword? Don't you know that a dagger is at a disadvantage when fighting an enemy?" When Fengjiu heard this, he looked at Elder Ghost and said, "Because this subordinate's wrist is thinner and my strength is weaker than theirs. Compared to a long sword or saber, this subordinate feels that a dagger is more suitable. Moreover, I can hide it on my body when I sleep. It's safer." When Elder Ghost heard his words, he felt that the first half of his words were quite reasonable. He nodded secretly. Indeed, this brat looked the smallest and his physique couldn't compare to the others. His wrist indeed didn't seem to have much strength. Picking a long sword wasn't as good as picking a dagger. After all, a dagger was shorter and had a faster reaction time. However, when he heard the latter half of his words, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He glanced at the brat with a gloomy gaze before looking away and waving his hand to indicate for him to return. After hearing his words, he felt that the first half of his words were just for show. He guessed that this brat only wanted to say the last 2 sentences. It seemed that this brat was quite afraid of death. He even thought of hiding a dagger on his body when he slept, just in case. When number 1, Lei Xiao, and the others heard Fengjiu's words, they all lowered their eyes, hiding the emotions that flashed through their eyes. That brat's wrist was thin. His strength was weak. How could he say that? He didn't even think about who it was that lifted a demonic cultivator up with one hand and smashed him to the ground, smashing him to death. "Take them all away." Elder Ghost waved his hand and turned to leave after giving his orders. On the other side, Murong Xian had sent people out to find out, but after Fengjiu left, he didn't get any news at all. He couldn't help but ponder, where could she have gone? "Has there been any news recently?" he asked a man in black who was kneeling in front of him. Replying to young master, "No." The black-robed man replied. "Has Nalan Emochin returned?" Murong Xian asked again. This subordinate sent people to guard the vicinity of the Nalan family, but they didn't see young Master Nalan return. However, they were discovered by the Nalan family. This subordinate had no choice but to transfer them back. Just send someone to keep an eye on their city gate. If Nalan Emochin arrives, he will definitely pass through the city gate. Fengjiu would definitely make a trip to the Nalan family. After all, her people had followed Nalan Emochin here. "Yes." That person replied, then left. On the other side, after Emochin and the others left, Xianyuan Mo's also began to make arrangements. However, his imperial father hadn't come out of seclusion yet, so he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. He could only guard here and wait for his imperial father to come out of seclusion before making arrangements. Sitting in the palace, a portrait of Fengjiu was placed in front of him. Her red robes were flamboyant, and her eyes carried an aura of wanton confidence. Her demonic charm and carefree aura blended together, vividly portraying her spirit. Chapter 1852. At this moment, he probably couldn't imagine that Fengjiu had snuck into the place where the Temple of Dark Night trained their spies. Master. Hui Lang came in from outside and looked at Xianyuanmo sitting in the palace. Xianyuanmo looked up and put away the portrait on the table. He said in a low voice, "Speak." The people we sent out came back with a piece of news. They said that the people from the Dark Knight Temple are going against the Phoenix Dynasty and our Xianyuan Dynasty because of one person. Grey Wolf took out the letter and handed it over. He said, "The details are all in here." Xianyuanmo erased the mark on the letter and took it out to read. His eyes narrowed. "Send people to investigate this person and see why they are targeting us. Also, tell the people hiding in the Temple of Dark Night to bide their time and wait for the right time." Master, don't worry. I've already sent people to investigate in secret after receiving the news. The people hiding in the Temple of Dark Night haven't made a move. But Master, what else does the letter say? Hui Lang asked curiously. He knew some information, but he didn't know much about the letter. Xianyuanmo glanced at him and handed the letter to him. Hui Lang took a look and couldn't help but cry out, "The people of the Temple of Dark Night are really wicked. They actually secretly caught some loose cultivators and planned to train them to infiltrate the 4 great immortal sects. However, these loose cultivators weren't trained from a young age. Can they be trained to be their people? The Temple of Dark Night has its own methods. If they weren't confident, they wouldn't have caught loose cultivators to train." Xianyuanmo stood up and walked down with his hands behind his back. As he walked down, he said, "From what I know, the Temple of Darkness has a poison called the heart-eroding pill. When this poison is first taken, it's like poison. You have to take the antidote regularly to suppress it, but after a period of time, this poison will make you lose your mind and become an absolute death warrior who will only obey orders. These loose cultivators must have also taken the heart-eroding pill. I think that the moment they become elite death warriors, they will also become death warriors without emotions and desires. Using these death warriors to infiltrate the 4 great immortal sects as spies, as long as they aren't discovered, they won't have to worry about betrayal." Xianyuanmo said and looked at the sky outside the palace with narrowed eyes. "So powerful." Hui Lang was in disbelief. "Not only that, the people trained by the Temple of Dark Night are probably no worse than ours." Xianyuanmo said and turned to look at Hui Lang. "We don't have any forces in the Uppers' territory, so I won't go there yet. However, I'm going to let you first pick an elite team from our pick and bring them there." Grey Wolf was startled and hurriedly asked, "Master, do you want me to bring people over to take care of everything?" There's no big deal here. When you get there, ask about Fengjiu. I want to know her safety," he ordered in a deep voice. Hearing this, Grey Wolf immediately replied, "Yes, Master, don't worry. I will go and prepare immediately." Saying this, he bowed and left. There were many people in the Temple of Yen who were above the nascent soul stage and even above the fairy realm. Since they were going to the Uppers continent, they naturally had to be above the nascent soul stage. "Ing-yi." Xianyuanmo called. In the dark, Ing-yi walked out in a flash. "Master." Chapter 1853. Ing-yi took a step forward and said, "This subordinate was just about to report to Master that the news of these people has been investigated. Originally, they had entered their respective sects, but later, because of their performance during the sect selection, they were selected by the Upper Continent's 4 sects to be accepted as disciples." "Oh." Xianyuanmo was slightly surprised. The 4 of them were selected by the 4 sects. Yes, Luo Fei, Ning Lang, Song Ming, and Duan Yi were all selected. Only Bai Xiao, who is good at beast taming, is nowhere to be found. Ying Yi said respectfully. Since they're in the upper continent, they'll meet Fingzhou sooner or later. She's the one who trained them. With them in the four sects, it'll be easier for her to do anything in the future. Xianyuan Mo's paused for a moment, then said, "Tell Hui Lang about this. Tell him to tell her about the four of them when he has news about Fingzhou." Yes. Ying Yi replied and retreated into the darkness again. On the other side, in one of the four sects, the Cloud Jade Immortal sect, two children, one big and one small, were practicing swordsmanship with wooden swords in their hands on a mountain peak. Two old men stood not far away. One of the old men stroked his beard and nodded with a satisfied look on his face. If Fingzhou and the others were here, they would definitely recognize the two children. The older one was Yang Yang and the younger one was Feng Yi. After the two of them were rescued, they were brought to the Cloud Jade Immortal sect and were apprenticed to the Su Wu Immortal Lord. These two children have only been learning for a few months, but they're already familiar with the swordsmanship. "Senior brother, you really have good taste," the old man next to him said to the Su Yuan Immortal Lord with a smile. It's all thanks to that old man Tian Jizi. The last time I went to his place, I asked him and he pointed me in that direction. I didn't expect that after searching for so long, I've finally found them." The old man narrowed his eyes with a smile, his face full of gratification. "If I nurture these two children well, I will have a successor. These two children have extraordinary temperaments, especially the younger one. His appearance is even more outstanding. I'm afraid he's not from an ordinary family, right?" the old man next to him asked. His gaze fell on Feng Yi in front of him. "I saved them on the way. I don't know which family they belong to. However, these two children are destined to be my master and disciple, but they are not related to me. If they stay with their relatives, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to survive. It's better to let them go down the mountain to look for their relatives in the future." The Void Immortal Lord stroked his beard as he spoke. He glanced at the two children and said, "By the way, didn't the four major sects send people out to search for the Star of the Phoenix? How come I heard that there are already some clues?" "The news is about a girl from the Sky Sun sect. It is said that this girl was born with a blessing from the heavens. No matter if it is her talent or her temperament, she is a phoenix among humans. Moreover, her appearance and bearing are both excellent. In addition, it is said that this girl has the mark of a phoenix on her body. Thus, she has been determined to be the Star of the Phoenix. Currently, the Sky Sun sect has listed her as an important target of protection." "Oh." The Void Immortal Lord replied thoughtfully. "However, as far as I know, wasn't Tian Jizi's disciple, Nalan Imo Chin, ordered to protect the Star of the Phoenix? Is he with that girl?" Chapter 1854. That's strange. If that woman is really the Star of the Phoenix, why isn't Nalan Imo Chin with her? The Void Immortal Lord pondered and asked, "Did Tian Jizi reveal any information?" It's not like senior brother doesn't know that unless Tian Jizi is willing to say it, it's useless for anyone to ask. The Sky Sun sect master sent someone to Heavenly Mountain, but he didn't say anything in the end." The old man chuckled and shook his head. "However, I think it's better to let nature take its course. When the time is right, perhaps the Star of the Phoenix will appear even if we don't look for her." The voices of the two gradually became softer. When their voices could no longer be heard, Feng Yi, who was practicing his sword, turned his quick-witted eyes. Only when he saw that the two of them had walked far away did he stop. Yang, master has already left." Feng Ye's soft voice was lowered with a hint of excitement as she spoke softly. Yang stopped and looked at the place where the two people were originally standing. Then he looked at Feng Yi and said stiffly, "We still have to practice the sword. Ever since he was in danger, he knew that he had to work hard to protect the people he wanted to protect. Therefore, he learned whatever master taught him and never slacked off. But Yang, I miss father and mother. The little guy's mouth flattened, and his pair of bright eyes suddenly became watery, like a pitiful little puppy. Father and mother haven't seen me for so long, they must miss me. Moreover, I miss them too, very, very much. Yang looked at him and thought for a while. Master said that when we grow up and have the ability to protect ourselves, we could go down the mountain. How old is grown up? Do I have to be as tall as my brother to be considered grown up? The little guy gestured with his hands. He raised one hand high and wanted to describe Feng Zhao's height. However, he was short and could only do that. Other than growing up, you also have to become very powerful. If you can be as powerful as Sister Feng, then you can sneak down the mountain without growing up. Yang said and thought of the most powerful person in his heart, Feng Zhou. In his opinion, no one was better than her. Is this the Xiao Zhou that I want to call my niece? Little Feng Ye's attention was immediately diverted. He was most curious about this niece whom he didn't recognize but was older than him in terms of seniority. However, he didn't know what she looked like. Yes, Sister Feng is very powerful. Yang nodded. When he spoke of Feng Zhou, the expression on his face changed. His eyes were filled with unconcealable admiration and respect. Yang, tell me about Xiao Zhou. I want to know. He tugged on Yang's sleeve, his soft voice filled with curiosity. Practice your swordsmanship first. I'll tell you when you're done, Yang said as she retreated and got into her fighting stance. Seeing this, little Feng Yi could only agree. He picked up the wooden sword and started practicing again. He secretly made up his mind to practice hard and go down the mountain as soon as possible to find his father and mother. At the same time, in another mountain in the Cloud Jade Immortal sect, Duan Yi, who was in seclusion, walked out of his cave abode. A young man in black came up to him. Master, this is the news from the other side. Chapter 1855. After Feng Zhou left, the few of them entered the sects of the 8 great empires under the arrangements of their respective families. Not long after, they were selected to enter the 4 great immortal sects of the upper continent. After becoming apprentices, they were ordered by their masters to cultivate in seclusion. They were completely oblivious to the outside world. However, they did not expect to receive such news when they came out of seclusion today. Looking at the thick stack of papers in his hand, he walked to the stone table outside the cave and sat down. He read through them one by one. From the initial shock to the end, he let out a sigh of relief. His heart, which had been in his throat, finally relaxed after reading the latest news. As long as Feng Zhou was fine, it was fine. Even if her Phoenix dynasty was destroyed, it would be easy for her to rebuild it with her strength. However, from the information inside, after the Phoenix dynasty was destroyed, the various large clans rose up, and the empire system should have been abolished. However, this was also good. For someone like her, it was impossible for her to stay in such a small empire forever. When he received this news, he believed that Luo Fei and the others would also receive this news. Their strength was originally on par with each other. Now that they had entered the 4 great immortal sects, he wondered how strong they were now. Continue investigating. I want to know where she is now. Duan Yi put away the information and waved his hand to signal the black-clothed youth to leave. Yes. The black-clothed youth responded and left in a flash. 3 months later. In the Heavenly Sun Immortal sect, one of the 4 great immortal sects, thunder suddenly rumbled in the sky. Immediately after, 3 thunderbolts struck a mountain below. Each thunderbolt was extremely powerful and attracted the people in the Heavenly Sun Immortal sect to come out to take a look. Look! It's the sound from the green bamboo peak. Someone is advancing. A normal advancement would not attract such thunderbolts. I'm afraid it's at least a golden core cultivator advancing to the nascent soul stage. The 3 thunderbolts have passed. Look at the clouds on the green bamboo peak. Among the peaks, a 7-colored rainbow appeared on one of the peaks. The clouds were like 5-colored clothes floating on the peak. Faintly, there seemed to be celestial music that I heard that a few months ago, the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect and the other 2 immortal sects had disciples advancing to the nascent soul stage. At that time, the sky was also extraordinary and eye-catching. It is said that the disciples who advanced were selected from the sects of the 8 great empires. Could it be that the one who has the chance to advance in the green bamboo peak is Senior Song Ming? It should be. Senior Brother Song's talent was praised by the sect master. Although he rarely shows himself, he is already known as a rare genius of our sect. His future is limitless. Among the disciples' discussions, the green bamboo peaks master, and he nodded with gratified after seeing the clouds in the sky. He knew that the disciple he had taken a fancy to was no ordinary person. Given enough time, he would definitely become the pillar of their sect. The clouds in the sky lasted for about an hour before dispersing. After the clouds dispersed, a cave in the middle of the green bamboo peak slowly opened. Song Ming, who was wearing a sect robe, walked out from inside. As soon as he came out, he saw his master standing outside the cave. Disciple greets master. He took a step forward and bowed respectfully. Disciple did not disappoint master. I have advanced to the mid-stage nascent soul stage. Chapter 1856. Not bad, not bad. He patted Song Ming's shoulder in relief. Since you've already entered the mid-nascent soul stage, you can take your time. He was very happy to see that his disciple had such a promising future. Now that he had such a cultivation, he believed that in a few years, his strength would increase even more. Song Ming smiled, but in his heart, he wondered how Duan Yi and the others were doing now. After sending off his master and the people who came to congratulate him, he summoned the shadow guard beside him. Master. A man dressed in black appeared beside him. Song Ming glanced at that person, then asked, "What's the news recently?" Thus, the shadow guard handed over a stack of information to him. These are the things that master asked me to pay attention to. Song Ming took it and looked through it. His brows furrowed slightly, and he only put it away after he finished reading all the information. If there's any news about Fingzhou, immediately send it to me. Yes. The shadow guard replied, then left in a flash. Song Ming stood with his hands behind his back, looked at the sky, and muttered, "I didn't expect so many things to happen. However, if it's her, I'll just treat it as an experience. I didn't expect Duan Yi and the others to have also entered the nascent soul stage." Thinking of this, the corners of his lips curled up, and a smile appeared on his face. Among the information, there was also news about the Phoenix Star. From knowing Fingzhou to being acquainted with her, they naturally knew who this Phoenix Star referred to. However, what they didn't expect was that the Heavenly Sun Immortal Sect seemed to have mistaken a female disciple of their sect as the Phoenix Star. This way, the hidden forces wouldn't target Fingzhou, and she would be safer. However, he didn't know where she was after not seeing her for so long. Thinking of that woman who made people sigh in admiration, the smile on his face deepened. There would be a chance to meet her again. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. At this time, Xianyuan Mos of the Xianyuan Empire had already brought people to the upper reaches of the continent after his father came out of seclusion. During these 3 months, Mo Chen waited for Fingzhou at the Naylan residence. However, day after day passed, there was still no news of her. Even Leng Shuang and Leng Hua were quickly developing their forces in secret under Mo Chen's arrangements. At the same time, they also inquired about their master's whereabouts. However, there was still no news at all. "Why hasn't master contacted us?" Luo Yu asked Du Fan and the others worriedly. He looked at them and saw that they were all busy with their own things. He then asked again, "Do you guys think that master? Did something happen to him?" As soon as he said this, a few people's gazes. "What are you talking about? Who is master? How could something happen to him? I think there must be something holding master back, so he didn't contact us." "Not bad. Let's take care of things and wait for master to come back. When master appears, she will definitely look for us." Hearing their words, Dufan smiled and nodded. "Yes, I think so too. We don't have to worry about master. I think something must have happened to her, or she can't contact us. However, her safety shouldn't be a problem. Have you forgotten that she still has a few contracted beasts by her side?" Chapter 1857. When they heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. The Yama Lord had come as well. This was a good thing for them. However, they had no idea where their master was right now. At the same time, Fingzhou, who they were thinking about, was with a group of people as they went through their final training. The venomous Black Forest was their final training ground. The Spectral Elder and the others had left after sending them to the forest. They weren't afraid that they would escape at all because the heart-eroding pills they had ingested had completely taken effect. At this moment, they were all people who only knew how to listen to orders. However, the Spectral Elder and the others who were waiting for them to return from their training didn't know that 123 people in black robes and black masks were seated together in the venomous Black Forest that the people from the Temple of Darkness couldn't control. Fengzhou's group originally only had 70 or 80 people, but later on, the 30 or 40 people that the Spectral Elder had spared were added to Fengzhou's group because of their outstanding performance. They went through training together, and that was exactly why there were 123 people today. At this moment, these people who had lost their minds and only knew how to listen to orders in the eyes of the Spectral Elder and the others from the Temple of Darkness were all looking at the young man in black robes with admiration. None of the people here could forget that it was because of him that they weren't reduced to killing tools. It was because of him that the poison in their bodies could be cured. It was because of him that they had the right to choose another path. With the help of this black fog poisonous forest, the poison in your bodies has been cured. The time to train here is up. If any of you want to leave, you can take this opportunity to leave. The Dark Knight Temple won't be able to track your whereabouts. Fengzhou's voice rang out unhurriedly. He swept his gaze past everyone and memorized every single one of their appearances. Everyone looked at each other when they heard that. In the end, they said in unison, "Captain, we want to follow you. We'll go wherever you go." After going through fire and water for a few months, they had already decided that as long as they could survive, they would definitely follow by their captain's side. Not only was he their captain, but he was also the one who saved them and gave them a new lease of life. Those who could sit here alive were all men who valued friendship. Naturally, they wouldn't leave because of this. Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flickered. "I'm going to deal with the Temple of Darkness. Do you want to follow me and become enemies with the Temple of Darkness?" Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the captain to want to attack the Temple of Darkness. However, they weren't afraid of death. Hearing this, they all stood up. "We will listen to Captain Yu. Climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, I will not hesitate." His voice, which was filled with vigor and determination, rang out clearly in the forest and echoed in everyone's ears. Hearing this, Fengzhou finally smiled. "Very good. Although the training has been brought forward and we only have 3 months, none of you have disappointed me. Since you are all willing to follow me, then I will lend you a helping hand." Chapter 1858. Looking at the pill bottle, everyone was stunned and stared at the bottle in his hand. They had been taking pills recently and their strength had increased step by step because the people of the Temple of Darkness had given them pills to advance. Now, seeing the leader take out the pill bottle, they were a little surprised. The pills given by the Temple of Darkness had been used up. Where did he get these from? Fengjiu waved his hand and pills flew out and landed in front of them. Eat this. It can increase your strength again. However, after taking this pill, don't take any more pills for advancement for the next 1 or 2 years. Hearing this, everyone took the pills without hesitation and swallowed them. As they swallowed the pills, the spiritual energy in their bodies surged. After a short moment of astonishment, everyone quickly sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled and walked a distance away to protect them. During this time of cultivation, most people's strength was around the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. Only a few people were at the early stage of the nascent soul stage. After taking Feng Jiu Nan's elixir, the early stage of the nascent soul stage cultivators jumped to the peak stage of the nascent soul stage, and those who were originally in the middle stage of the nascent soul stage directly broke through and entered the flying immortal stage. Among them, Lei Xiao and a few others were at the mid-nascent soul stage. The others were at the early nascent soul stage. Because of their advancement, the sky was filled with continuous thunder, which surprised the few demonic cultivators of the Temple of Darkness who were hiding outside the forest. There seems to be something wrong with the thunder. Let's go in and take a look. A flying immortal stage cultivator said to the 2 people beside him. The 3 of them went into the black fog poisonous forest together. They didn't follow those people who had entered the forest to train. Only a few of them stayed outside the forest and paid attention to the movements. Now, they suddenly heard the rumbling sound of heavenly thunder striking down from the sky. It was really a little abnormal. Following the place where the thunder fell, the closer they got, the more shocked they were. As soon as the first bolt of lightning struck down, another bolt of lightning struck down as well. Bolts of lightning spread out on the ground, and visible ripples formed by the airflow spread out. The powerful pressure and aura were shocking to behold. Hiss! The leader of the flying immortal stage cultivators gasped. Looking at the powerful pressure and aura in the forest, he exclaimed, "How can it be so powerful? I'm afraid there's more than 1 or 2 flying immortal stage cultivators." They sped up and moved forward. The closer they got, the more shocked they became. Until they saw a black figure standing beside a tree, playing with a mask in his hand. 100 meters behind him, a group of cultivators in black robes sat cross-legged to advance. Seeing this, they immediately stepped forward and came before the black-clothed young man. What's going on here? How can they advance by advancement? The black-robed youth, who was Feng Jiu, looked at the fairy realm cultivator in front of her. His eyes were wide open, and he looked at the scene behind her in shock. Feng Jiu's eyes flashed, and she paused for a moment before saying, "They are breaking through." Chapter 1859. It's because they just took the elixir, Feng Jiu said as his gaze swept past the 3 of them. What do you mean? The fairy realm cultivator furrowed his brows. In the next moment, he saw the young man in front of him curl his lips into a devilish smile as he spoke in a cold voice. That's exactly what it means. As soon as Feng Jiu finished speaking, he instantly attacked. A cold light flashed through his sleeves as a sharp dagger flew towards the fairy realm cultivator at a speed that was too fast for anyone to cover their ears with their hands. The fairy realm cultivator was shocked as he immediately leaned back to avoid the dagger that was about to slash his throat. After he took a few steps back in shock, he saw the black-robed young man's strange movement technique flash past. The dagger in his hand turned and slashed at the 2 nascent soul realm cultivators who had yet to react. The 2 nascent soul realm cultivators groaned as they fell to the ground with their eyes wide open. They didn't even have time to react. Seeing that the black-robed young man had killed 2 nascent soul realm cultivators, the fairy realm cultivator took a step back defensively. Number 9. What are you doing? Are you trying to rebel? Feng Jiu curled the corners of his lips and didn't reply to him. He only stared at him. In the next moment, the black figure flashed once again. Her movement technique was extremely fast, and her attacks were swift and fierce with killing intent. Even the fairy realm cultivator couldn't help but be shocked at this moment. Just as he was about to retaliate, his face turned pale with a whoosh. A strong force of pressure attacked him, and the shock that came from his soul caused his body to stiffen. It was as if he was being controlled by someone. He wanted to move and shout, but he couldn't do it. Whoosh! The swift and fierce blade energy slashed past, and the fairy realm cultivator groaned. His eyes widened in disbelief as his body stiffened and fell to the ground. Bang! His entire body fell to the ground as he stared at Fengzhou, as if he was asking why. Fengzhou glanced at the 3 corpses on the ground and took the cosmos bags from their waists. Then, he condensed a flame in his palm and burned the 3 corpses. A day later, when everyone had completed their breakthroughs, they all stood in front of Fengzhou with unconcealable excitement on their faces. Even though they had a lot of questions in their hearts, they didn't ask. They just looked at him with unconcealable excitement in their eyes. After interacting with him for so long, they already knew that their captain was extraordinary. But how deep was his depth? All this time, no one had been able to figure it out. Now that he had revealed such a move again, it really shocked them to the core. After all, even the advancement elixirs that the Temple of the Dark Knight had given them were not as good as the elixirs that the captain had given them yesterday. Furthermore, the captain had given them so many elixirs without even blinking an eye. Furthermore, after taking the elixirs, only a few of the 123 people were at the peak of the nascent soul stage, while the rest had already become cultivators at the fairy realm. There was a huge difference in strength between each stage. Now that they stood out, even the Temple of the Dark Knight would have to be wary of them. Even among the clans outside, there wasn't a single clan that had so many fairy realm cultivators. Fengzhou looked at everyone and nodded in satisfaction when he saw their current strength and cultivation. He smiled and said, "Not bad, very good. Next, I'll tell you about the arrangements after we return." Chapter 1860. Once we leave this place, the most important thing is to remember not to be discovered. Once you've figured out their strengths, deal with them first. After that, don't stay behind and leave. She paused and looked at them. "Remember, I want everyone to leave this place alive." Everyone's hearts warmed as they nodded. "Yes, Captain. We'll definitely leave this place alive. Let's go. If anything unexpected happens after we return, act according to my orders." With that, she led them out of the forest. 2 days later, when Fengzhou and the others stood in the plaza once more with their masks on, even the spectral elder could not help but be stunned. He looked at the 100 or so people in front of him in disbelief. "Take off your masks," the spectral elder called out as he stared at the 100 or so people. When he saw them take off their masks one by one like puppets and reveal their appearances, the spectral elder could not help but widen his eyes as his heart trembled. How was this possible? In the short span of 3 months, these people had all become fairy realm cultivators, and only a few of them were nascent soul realm cultivators. Could it be that after taking the advancement elixir, their advancement was really that great? Ghost, spectral elder, how did they advance so quickly? The fairy realm cultivators and nascent soul cultivators to the side all widened their eyes in shock. They stared at the group of people as if they had seen ghosts. How could they possess such strength in just 3 short months? If it were not for the fact that they were standing right in front of them, they would not have dared to believe that this was real. 123 people, and there are actually only a few nascent soul cultivators among them. This is too inconceivable, too inconceivable. The spectral elder stared at the group, and his gaze paused on Fengzhou in front of him. This youth with number 9 had actually become a nascent soul cultivator in such a short amount of time. He was truly not simple. When he thought about how these people were groomed by him, and how they all obeyed his orders, his heart burned with passion. There were more than 100 of them, and they had such strength. Even the headquarters of the Temple of Dark Knight would not be able to find so many fairy realm cultivators. If they took the advancement elixir, would their strength increase again, and they would directly leap to the next level? His heart was in a mess. In order to avoid being discovered by the people behind him, he took in a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Looking at the 100 or so people before him, he secretly made a decision. He wanted to take this powerful group for himself. He wanted to turn this team into his subordinates, and not belong to the Temple of Darkness. However, they had obtained their current cultivation after consuming the advancement pill. What was their battle prowess? A dark light flashed through his eyes, and he said, "Number 1, number 9, number 13, number 45, number 78, step forward." As soon as he spoke, 5 people walked out from the group in front of him. Because they had taken off their masks, it could be seen that the 5 of them did not have any expression on their faces as they coldly looked ahead. The Ghost Elder was very satisfied when he saw the few people that walked out as soon as he spoke. He nodded slightly, and then he suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the few Immortal Realm experts and nascent Soul Realm Devil cultivators that stood at the side, and his voice suddenly became cold. "Kill them." Chapter 1861. The expressions of those people changed drastically, and as they quickly retreated, a few of the Fairy Realm cultivators shouted at the Ghost Elder, "What are you doing?" However, as soon as they spoke, an attack came at them. The fierce attack was filled with killing intent, and it was merciless, causing them to be extremely shocked. Logically speaking, they had 4 flying Immortal Realm cultivators and 2 nascent Soul Realm Devil cultivators, so they should not be afraid of those 5 people. However, the moment they attacked, they were shocked, especially when the black-clothed youth among the 5 people actually dared to attack one of their flying Immortal Realm cultivators. This kind of courage shocked them even more. Were they not afraid of death? Oh, that's right, they were trained as suicide soldiers, and all of them had consumed heart-eroding pills, so how could they be afraid of death? These people all obeyed the Ghost Elder's orders, and now that he had ordered these people to kill them, they probably wouldn't stop until they killed them. Swish! A gust of wind shot out from his palm, and the fierce sound of a blade of air could be heard. The Ghost Elder had his hands behind his back as he watched with narrowed eyes, and his gaze fell on the 9th black-clothed young man. That young man was only at the middle stage of the nascent Soul Realm, while his opponent was at the initial stage of the Fairy Realm. There was a difference of 1 stage between their strengths, but he was still able to rely on his extremely fast speed and unpredictable movement techniques to force the Fairy Realm cultivator to retreat step by step, causing him to be in an extremely sorry state. He couldn't dodge in time, and his sleeve was torn by the 9th black-clothed young man. His opponent's fingers had scratched his arm, and a few streaks of blood seeped out. He grunted, and a trace of killing intent flashed through his narrowed eyes. In the next moment, he moved his hand, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He poured spiritual energy into his palm, and a fierce current of air streaked across the blade of the sword. With a swish, a ray of sword energy shot out, and it attacked the black-clothed young man in front of him. Fengzhou's face was cold, and her expression couldn't be seen. When she saw the sword energy shooting towards her, she dodged to the side, but she didn't manage to dodge it completely. Instead, she pretended that she couldn't dodge it in time, and her arm was cut by the sword energy, causing blood to seep out. At the same time, as she charged forward, a dagger from her sleeve fell into her hand, and the moment the Fairy Realm cultivator turned around, the dagger in her hand fiercely slashed his throat. Swish! His movements were as smooth as flowing water, and his attacks were clean and efficient. He was so fast that people couldn't help but secretly praise him. Good movement technique. When he saw this scene, Senior Ghost's eyes narrowed and he nodded to himself. At the same time that he was slightly surprised, he was also very satisfied. Who would have thought that this brat could actually kill someone above his level? His potential was truly limitless. What was different from Elder Ghost was that although the people standing behind him all watched expressionlessly, when they saw that their captain was injured, their hearts still rose slightly. Fortunately, in the next moment, they saw that person being killed. Now that he thought about it, wouldn't it be strange if the captain was able to kill a fairy realm cultivator with the strength of a nascent soul stage cultivator without sustaining any injuries? He had dodged that attack very well. It wouldn't hurt his vitals, and it wouldn't arouse anyone's suspicions. At least, that elder ghost wouldn't have thought that it was their captain's intention. The others were the same as well. They attacked ruthlessly and directly at the vital points. This was the result of their recent training. They had to specifically attack the vital points of the enemy when they attacked. It was fine if they didn't attack, but once they attacked, they had to take the enemy's life. Chapter 1862. Elder Ghost chuckled as he looked at the people who were being forced to retreat. How could that be? This is also training. I believe that if the higher-ups knew about this, they would definitely agree. The people looked at him, then looked at the 100 or so people who were standing still, as well as the people who were attacking them. A thought flashed through their minds. I know. You saw that these spies were extremely outstanding, so you wanted to take them for yourself. Once this was said, the people were shocked. They knew that it wouldn't be easy for them to leave this place alive today, so they immediately took out their magic tools to fight. However, their reactions were too slow. Number 1 and the others' attacks were fierce, and they didn't want them to leave alive at all. Whoosh! Bang! Sword energy swept past, and a nascent soul cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood before being sent flying. He fell to the ground and twitched for a while before dying. Bang! Number 1 struck out with his palm, sending a fairy realm cultivator flying. At the same time, the sharp sword in his hand chased after the fairy realm cultivator. Whoosh! With a whoosh, the sword pierced the fairy realm cultivator's heart. When the sword was pulled out, blood splattered all over the ground, and the smell of blood spread through the air. Not long after, the people died one by one at their hands. Only when the last person fell did Fengjiu and the others put away their weapons and stand in a line in front of Elder Ghost. Elder Ghost, they've been killed. The mission is complete. Fengjiu's voice was cold as he spoke respectfully. When Elder Ghost saw this, he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. Good. Very good. I've never brought a group of spies who are as outstanding as you. The survival rate is high, and every one of you is an existence that can take on 10 people. Very good. Ha 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 ha. He raised his head and laughed loudly. Looking at the 123 people in front of him, he was extremely excited. With this group of people, it would be more than enough for him to rebel against the Temple of Darkness and establish his own sect. Go back and rest. I'll give you your missions tomorrow. He waved his hand and watched them leave with satisfaction. When they returned to their bunks, some of them fell back a few steps and stayed outside, while the others surrounded Fengjiu. Captain, are you all right? The wound on your hand needs to be treated quickly. Fengjiu waved his hand and smiled. It's nothing. It's just a flesh wound. As he spoke, he sprinkled some medicine on the wound and simply bandaged it. Captain, that ghost elder wants to take our team for himself, right? He's got guts. It's not courage, it's ambition. I think he wants to establish his own sect. But that's true. All of us have the strength of the fairy realm. This kind of strength is already very strong in the outside world. It's not strange for him to have such thoughts. Fengjiu raised her hand and said, it's best to be careful here. Don't talk about it for now. Let's go back and rest. We'll see what mission he's going to give us tomorrow before we decide what to do. Yes. Hearing his words, everyone responded and dispersed. The next morning, everyone stood side by side in the plaza. In just a night's time, the people standing here today discovered that apart from the 100 or so people, the number of devil cultivators who were originally guarding here seemed to have decreased by a lot. They guessed that it might be because of Elder Ghost's actions. They thought to themselves, what kind of mission will Elder Ghost give us today? Chapter 1863. The two seductive women followed behind the spectral elder. At this moment, they couldn't help but raise their heads and size up the 123 black-clothed spies in front of them. Were these people the spies of a fairy realm cultivator who had only used 3 months to become a fairy realm cultivator? Greetings, spectral elder. Everyone bowed respectfully, and their loud voices rang out in the square. Elder Gue replied. His sharp gaze swept across the people in front of him. Only then did he open his mouth. You're all spies that have passed the training. Originally, you needed a year's time. However, to have such strength in just 3 months, you've truly surprised me. Now, I'll arrange the first mission for you. Just as the spectral elder was about to give them their missions, his eyebrows suddenly twitched. His gaze swept past the crowd and landed on the forest outside the square. Perhaps he had sensed something, and his expression changed slightly. Fengjiu caught a glimpse of a ray of light from the corner of his eye. Furthermore, there were ripples of spiritual energy, and that was where the transportation formation was. It seemed that someone had come from the transportation formation. Indeed, after the spectral elder hurriedly left behind a few words, he sent the two women behind him away and quickly walked towards the forest. When the spectral elder arrived at the formation and saw the people who had walked out, he couldn't help but step forward respectfully. This subordinate kowtows in salute to master. His heart trembled at this moment, and a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. He thought to himself, why did master come at this time? Why wasn't there any news of him coming? Could it be that he heard some news? At that moment, his body tensed up slightly, and his heartbeat sped up. His palms were covered in sweat. Although the Temple of the Dark Knight might not have hundreds of fairy realm cultivators, there were quite a number of cultivators who were above the fairy realm. This was especially true for the people who followed their master. Any one of them could easily destroy a town. If he were to find out that he was having second thoughts, he was afraid that. What? Are you afraid when you see me coming? The masked black-robed man narrowed his eyes and stared at the kneeling spectral elder. His sharp eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Hearing this, the spectral elder's heart sank, but he hurriedly said, "Forgive me, master. Something happened here, and I didn't think that master would suddenly come, so. What happened?" The masked man in black robes glanced at him and shifted his gaze away. His gaze landed on the people standing upright in that direction. It's like this. The fairies and nascent soul cultivators here were all killed when they fought with the spies. I haven't reported this matter yet, as I was worried that master would blame me. Oh. The black-robed man's voice was slightly raised as he walked forward. Are they the spies I asked you to train? Wasn't it only for 3 months? How did he have the ability to kill the fairy realm cultivators under my command? Chapter 1864. Hearing this, the black-robed man's eyes moved slightly, and a dark light flashed through his eyes. He walked up to the front and arrived before the 123 people. His gaze swept past them, and after sensing their strength and cultivation, he nodded to himself. Well done. He glanced at Elder Ghost who followed behind him. To be able to have such strength and cultivation in 3 months, I have to say that the talent of this group of spies is extremely good. This subordinate doesn't dare claim the credit. This is all because the higher-ups gave them pills and extremely good resources to nurture them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to achieve such results in such a short period of time. Elder Ghost hurriedly said. They've all taken the heart-eroding pill. The black-robed man asked again. Yes. Elder Ghost respectfully replied, and then he hurriedly said to the 123 people, from now on, your master is this person before you. You must obey him absolutely and unconditionally. Pledge your loyalty to him to the death, and you won't hesitate to die 10,000 deaths. Greetings, Master. This subordinate pledges his loyalty to him to the death, and he won't hesitate to die 10,000 deaths. The 123 people respectfully knelt on one knee. Their voices were loud and clear as if they were swearing an oath, and it clearly echoed in the square. Hearing this, Elder Ghost's heart ached. No matter how many plans are made, the plans of the heavens can't compare. He originally wanted to take these 123 people for himself, but now, he could only hand over the people he trained for nothing. When the black-robed man saw this scene, he seemed to be very satisfied. He glanced at Elder Ghost, and then his gaze swept past the people in the first row. His low and cold voice carried a bit of playfulness. Then let me see if you've truly passed the training. Hearing this, although the 123 people wore masks and were expressionless, their hearts still moved slightly. He wanted to see their strength. What did he want to do? Within the crowd, although Fingzhou's gaze didn't waver in the slightest like the others, when she saw the masked person before her and the people beside him, she still felt slightly surprised in her heart. If she remembered correctly, the masked man should be the man she saved in the medical center. After she entered the medical center, she smelled a rotten smell and saw the naked man wearing only a mask. If she had known that he was the master of the Temple of Darkness, she would have killed him. Unfortunately, not only had she not killed him, she had even saved his life. You, come out. The black-robed man pointed his finger forward, and his gaze fell on Fingzhou. Seeing this, Fingzhou respectfully stepped forward and stood upright. Use everything you have to kill him. The black-robed man extended his finger and pointed at Old Ghost. When Elder Ghost heard this, he was shocked and his eyes couldn't help but widen. Master. Yes. Fingzhou respectfully replied. In the next moment, he instantly attacked Elder Ghost. The dagger that shone with a cold light slashed through the air, heading straight for Elder Ghost's lifeline. Elder Ghost quickly retreated and looked at the black-robed man in shock. He seemed to be in disbelief and didn't understand why he would be treated like this. Master, what did this subordinate do wrong? Chapter 1865. Elder Ghost's heart trembled and his gaze narrowed. Master. Before he could finish speaking, he instantly retreated and took out a teleportation scroll, intending to escape. Seeing this, the black-robed man's eyes narrowed. Just as he was about to order the people behind him to intercept and kill him, he saw the black figure in front of him dash out with a sharp blade of air. Whoosh! Hiss! Aw! As the sharp blade of air streaked past, the dagger in Fingzhou's hand shot out with a whoosh, hitting one of the hands that held the teleportation scroll. Elder Ghost's hand was in pain, and he gasped as he cried out in pain. The teleportation scroll in his hand fell to the ground. Just as he was about to pick up the teleportation scroll, a sharp gust of wind from a palm attacked him. He was so shocked that he immediately retreated, not daring to stay. When he raised his eyes and saw that it was number 9, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. Damn it! He had really failed miserably at such an easy task. He had failed. A trace of surprise flashed through the eyes of the black-robed man and the 4 people behind him. They didn't expect that this masked spy would actually be able to force Elder Ghost, who was at the peak of the fairy realm, to retreat step by step with just the strength of a nascent soul. It seemed that this group of spies was truly outstanding. Their gazes descended onto the Ghost Elder and the spy. They noticed that the aura emanating from the spy was only at the nascent soul realm. Normally, a nascent soul realm cultivator wouldn't be a match for a cultivator at the peak of the flying immortal realm. However, the spy relied on his strange movement technique and extremely swift speed to firmly gain the upper hand. The spy's attacks were sharp and swift. Coupled with his unpredictable movement technique, speed and techniques made up for each other's shortcomings. When he attacked, he went straight for the vital points of a person's body. There were many times when Elder Ghost almost died at the spy's hands. Young master, this spy's techniques are very strange. His attacks are extremely fast, and his techniques are ruthless. He goes straight for the vital points. I reckon that before he was recruited by us, he should have some talent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to reach such a level of movement technique in 3 months. An old man standing behind the black-robed man spoke as he sized up the movements and techniques of the black-robed spy in front of him. This person is only at the nascent soul stage and yet he has such extraordinary strength. It is indeed rare. The black-robed man nodded his head as he spoke. He seemed to be very impressed. Because they saw that the black-clothed spy had the upper hand with his strange skills, they didn't make a move. It wasn't until Elder Ghost couldn't dodge in time that his throat was slit by the dagger in his panic that he fell to the ground. Yes. Blood flowed out of Elder Gui's mouth. His eyes trembled as he glared at number 9. Shock and astonishment filled his eyes. He moved his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he was unable to say anything and breathed his last. Aside from the dead Elder Ghost, no one knew what kind of terror he had suffered at the last moment of his life. Only when Ghost Elder breathed his last did Fingio retract his gaze, hiding the expression in his eyes. He held the dagger and walked forward, arriving in front of the black-robed man. Master, the mission is complete, please accept. A middle-aged man quickly walked forward. After checking on the dead Elder Ghost, he returned behind the black-robed man and spoke in a low voice before standing properly. The black-robed man had a playful smile on his lips. His gaze carried a hint of interest as he stared at the black-clothed spy in front of him. Hearing the voice, he didn't seem to be very old. Chapter 1866. Hearing that, Fingio replied, yes. Then, she reached out and took off the mask on her face, revealing the handsome face behind the mask. Her current appearance was disguised. Unless it was someone very familiar with her, no one would be able to recognize her. This man was still unconscious when she saved him last time. The people around him had probably long forgotten about her. After all, she was just a person they met on the road. Who would remember her? The black-robed man looked at the face in front of him and was a little surprised by the youth and good complexion under the mask. This young man looked to be less than 20 years old. His skin was white and his facial features were not extremely outstanding. However, he was still handsome and very harmonious. Because of the consumption of the heart-eroding pill, these people almost instinctively obeyed orders and would not resist. This was the most suitable point to keep people around because people who consumed the heart-eroding pill did not have to worry about betrayal at all. The black-robed man glanced at the waist tag of the young man in front of him and took a look. Number 9. Yes. Fingio replied. Among the 123 of you, who is the leader? The black-robed man played with the waist tag engraved with number 9 in his hand and swept his gaze across the people in front of him. Finally, his eyes fell on one person. In his opinion, this person was the strongest among these people. Now, in terms of the leader, it should be this person. However, just when he thought there was no mistake, he heard number 9 in front of him speak. Master. This subordinate is the leader. Fingio said, but cursed in her heart. Usually, others called her master. After mixing in here, she had always been the one to call others master. Especially this person was an enemy. It was really sullen. You. The black-robed man was slightly surprised and asked with a playful smile, you can be their leader with the strength of a nascent soul. Are they convinced? This subordinate obeys the order. In other words, they were all following orders. There was nothing to be convinced about. Hearing this, the black-robed man's lips curled up slightly and nodded. Well said. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the 100 or so people in front of him. Then, he said to number 9, since you're their captain, then I'm going to send 16 people to infiltrate the 4 major sects. In your opinion, which 16 people should I send? Hearing this, Fengjiu looked straight ahead and replied in a clear voice, "Master. We are all very outstanding. Anyone who is sent will be able to do the job. We will definitely not disappoint, Master." Ha 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 ha. What a good, very outstanding, what a good anyone can do it. Very good. The black-robed man was very happy. He raised his head and laughed loudly. His happy expression surprised the 4 people behind him. They didn't expect their young master to be so happy because of this. For a moment, the 4 people's gazes fell on the young man named Number 9. This young man's answer was also very clever. Just a simple sentence had made the young master so happy. He was indeed a talent. Moreover, not only was he intelligent, but his strength was also extraordinary. He was really a good seedling. The black-robed man stopped laughing and turned to look at the middle-aged man beside him. "Pick out 16 people and tell them to infiltrate the 4 major sects as spies and gather information for us." "Yes." The middle-aged man responded. He stepped forward and ordered everyone to take off their masks. Then, he picked out 16 younger people and had them step forward. Chapter 1867. "I'm here." Fengjiu narrowed her eyes as she replied. "From today onwards, you'll be by my side." The black-robed man's voice was casual and there was a hint of amusement in his tone. He seemed to be very satisfied with Fengjiu. "Yes." Fengjiu replied. He was slightly surprised. He didn't think that he would be able to get close to the Lord of the Temple of Darkness like this. If he was by his side, it would be much easier to destroy the Temple of Darkness. Moreover, he might be able to get some information that they couldn't find out. "Sir, let's go inside and have a rest." The old man walked forward and said. "Yes," the black-robed man replied. Then, he turned around and walked forward. The others also followed him. As Fengjiu turned to follow, he gave a look to the more than 100 people behind him. Only then did he leave with them. When they arrived at the place where Elder Ghost had been resting, 2 seductive women came up to them with charming smiles. Unexpectedly, before they could even get close to the black-robed man, they were sent flying with a palm strike. "Ah!" The 2 flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood. They fell to the ground, their faces pale and on the verge of death. "Clean them up." The black-robed man frowned and ordered. He walked in without even looking. Fengjiu, who was walking at the back, naturally became the one to clean up the mess. After ending their lives, she dragged them out and threw them into the beast cage. At this moment, the black-robed man was sitting in the room. He narrowed his eyes and asked the people around him, "What do you think of Number 9? They were startled and looked at each other. They didn't know what their master meant. However, from the previous situation, it seemed that he admired Number 9 very much. Thus, one of them said, "Although he was hit by the heart-eroding pill, his mind is not inflexible. He can also kill people above his level. It's clear that his potential is limitless. That's natural. The person that our master fancies must be outstanding." Another middle-aged man added, "Number 9 is still young, but he has such a cultivation. If he is trained, he will definitely be a great help to our master in the future. Young master, have some water." The old man did not join in the conversation. Instead, he brought a cup of tea out of nowhere and placed it in front of the black-robed man. At this moment, Fengjiu walked in and bowed respectfully. "Master, it's been cleaned up." "All right." The black-robed man waved his hand. Number 9 walked up to him and stood quietly beside him. Seeing this, the corners of the black-robed man's mouth curled up slightly. After glancing at him, he no longer looked at him. Instead, he took a sip of tea and asked, "I heard that the ghost doctor came here and saved a true monarch from the Huaxian sect. Have you found her whereabouts?" Hearing this, the expressions of the few people turned serious. After taking a deep breath, one of the middle-aged men carefully said, "Master, we have lost contact with the ghost doctor ever since he left the territory of the Huasyan sect. Our people have searched everywhere but have not found any clues. Even now, we do not know where he is staying." Another person said, "Master, although this subordinate does not have any news about the ghost doctor, there is another piece of news." He paused and said, "Tianji Elder's disciple, Nalan Amo Chin, has returned to the clan more than 2 months ago. Recently, there have been 1 or 2 forces developing in the dark." Chapter 1868. Fengjiu listened quietly. He didn't expect the people from the Temple of the Dark Night to keep an eye on them. 2 powers. Could it be Xianyuan Mo's and the Feng Wei's group? Just as he was thinking, he heard the black-robed man's voice again. This ghost doctor called Fengjiu really has some ability. Even after coming here, she can still avoid our eyes. Since she wants to play, then let's play with her. He turned the blood jade ring on his thumb. His eyes were deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. The people behind him looked at each other. One of them stepped forward and said, "Master, this subordinate has a portrait of the ghost doctor. Does Master want to see it?" Ever since she made a deal with that person to deal with the Phoenix dynasty, Master had only made arrangements for the matters below, and had not even seen the portraits of those people. She reckoned that even if she met Ghost Dr. Fengjiu, he would not be able to recognize her. She's just a woman. What's there to see? The black-robed man said uninterestedly. He waved his hand and signaled to the people behind him, "You guys go out and make arrangements." "Yes." The 3 people behind him left, leaving only the old man and Fengjiu standing there. Seeing the others leave, the old man went forward and set up a chessboard on the table. He sat in front of the black-robed man and began to play chess with him. The 2 of them occasionally chatted. In addition, the old man called the black-robed man young master instead of master. It was clear that they didn't have a normal master-servant relationship. After the 2 of them played a game of chess, the black-robed man called, "Number 9, come and play a game with this sovereign." Hearing this, the old man stood up and retreated to the side to sit quietly. Fengjiu was slightly startled. He said, "Master, this subordinate doesn't know how to play chess. Even if he did, he couldn't play with him. Chess was like a person. If you wanted to understand a person in the shortest amount of time, you could see what kind of person they were in a game of chess. It doesn't matter. This sovereign doesn't expect you to win." He glanced at Fengjiu, "Sit down." His tone was firm and didn't allow for refusal. "Yes." Fengjiu responded. He sat down cross-legged and stared at the black and white chess pieces in front of him. When the black-robed man saw Fengjiu staring at the chess piece in a daze, he couldn't help but sneer. Without saying anything, he picked up the black chess piece and placed it down. When Fengjiu saw this, he picked up a white chess piece and placed it down as well. The black-robed man raised his eyebrows when he saw the 2 ghost stones that were close to each other. He glanced at the boy before him and picked up a black ghost stone before placing it down. The moment he placed his ghost stone, the boy also picked up a white ghost stone and placed it down. When he saw where the boy placed his ghost stone, he frowned slightly and the corners of his lips twitched. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he didn't open his mouth. Instead, he picked up another chess piece and placed it down. Only then did he withdraw his hand. He saw the young man place another chess piece down without thinking, and this time, he followed his black chess piece. When he saw this opening, his face couldn't help but darken. "You're playing your own game. Why are you following me?" Fengjiu looked up blankly at the black-robed man, whose eyes were filled with anger. He asked in confusion, "Can't we leave like this? Master didn't say anything. Don't follow me. Play your own game." He suppressed his anger as he picked up another chess piece and placed it down. "Yes." Fengjiu responded. He narrowed his eyes and picked up a white chess piece and placed it at the corner of the chessboard. Chapter 1869. The black-robed man glanced at the chess piece, the corner of his mouth twitching. He continued to play, but after a while, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief when he saw that the white chess piece had trapped him. "You've trapped a lot of your chess pieces. Do you see that? Here." He pointed at the pile of chess pieces that the young man had placed in the corner of the chessboard, blocking the way out. "Isn't this the way to play? Then how should I play?" Fengjiu asked curiously, but he snorted in his heart. It'd be better if he died from anger. "Think of a way to trap my black pieces." He took a deep breath and said. "But what if this subordinate wins?" She asked carefully, as if he would win. "Pfft." The black-robed man sneered. "You. We'll talk about it after you win." As a result, the two of them began to play again. Feng Jiu played in a disorderly manner. She placed a piece on the left and a piece on the right. Sometimes she would place her pieces far away, and sometimes she would trap her white pieces. The black-robed man did not speak again. He just endured the whole game. "I've lost," Feng Jiu said as he stood up. "You didn't lose, you lost terribly," the black-robed man said, waving his hand to signal for him to step aside. At this moment, the old man next to him chuckled. "Young master, let me play a game with you." The young man didn't seem to know anything about chess. He didn't play in a systematic manner, and placed his chess piece whenever there was an opening. He was a complete layman. "I'm not playing anymore." He narrowed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. "Go and see if they've made the arrangements. If they've made the arrangements, we'll leave. There's no need to wait until tomorrow." "Yes." The old man stood up and walked outside. Fengjiu stood there quietly, not making a sound. After about an hour, the four people outside came in together. After reporting to the black-robed man stood up and walked outside. She followed behind them. Only when she got out did she realize that other than a few spies who were sent to infiltrate the four major immortal sects, they were going to take the rest away in batches. Fengjiu followed the black-robed man and the old man and left through the teleportation array. There was a flash of light, and when he felt the fluctuations of the array again, he was already standing firmly on the ground. When she arrived here, she discovered that this was actually the back hall of a palace. Moreover, it was a palace built on the side of a mountain. She was slightly surprised. Her eyes glanced around without leaving a trace. Then, she followed behind the black-robed man and walked forward in an orderly manner. This place was very big. Even though she did not see anyone guarding the surroundings, her divine consciousness could still sense that there were many people watching her from the shadows. Moreover, judging from the hidden pressure and aura, they should all be cultivators at the peak of the fairy realm. Among them, there were even a few extremely subtle auras. If she had not been paying close attention, she would not have been able to detect them. Walking forward from the back, the person in front entered the palace, while the old man who was a few steps behind turned around and said, "Number 9. "Yes." Fengjiu looked at him. "Since young master asked you to stay by his side, from now on, you will guard him closely. As a shadow guard, you don't have to show yourself unless it's necessary. You will stay by young master's side. If he doesn't order you to, you don't have to show yourself." "Yes," she replied. Chapter 1870. She watched from the shadows as the black-robed man entered the palace and began to deal with the documents and information on the table. Even after entering the palace, he still did not take off his mask. This made her curious. Could it be that the face under the mask was disfigured? Otherwise, why did he not have the habit of taking off his mask in his own territory? In this palace, other than the old man who was waiting at the side, there was only her and the two auras in the shadows. It was a little boring to just stand there. After an unknown period of time, she lowered her head and leaned against the wall in the shadows and fell asleep. At first, no one noticed it. Until the sound of snoring was heard, the black-robed man who was dealing with the documents in the palace and the old man who was waiting at the side were slightly startled. The two of them looked in the direction of the sound at the same time with a trace of astonishment in their eyes. After the old man recovered from his astonishment, he was about to call out Fingzhou when the black-robed man raised his hand to stop him. A trace of interest appeared in the black-robed man's eyes. He stood up and walked softly to the large pillar at the back. Before he got close, he saw that the black-robed youth was facing the large pillar with his forehead pressed against it. Although he was standing straight, there was no doubt that he had fallen asleep. Moreover, he was sleeping very soundly. Faint snoring sounds came from under his mask. Seeing this scene, a sense of novelty appeared in his eyes. No one had ever dared to doze off where he was. Moreover, he was able to sleep while standing. It was simply inconceivable. Because of the novelty, he walked closer. Who knew that at this moment, the youth who was dozing off against the large pillar suddenly raised his head. That pair of dazed and sleepy eyes crashed into his eyes. Master, please forgive me." Fengzhou immediately squatted down with one knee on the ground. At the same time, he narrowed his eyes to hide the flash of annoyance in his eyes. The hall was lit with calming sandalwood, and the fragrance was light and pleasant to the nose. In addition, it was very quiet inside, and she was standing in the dark, leaning against a large pillar. She relaxed for a moment and actually dozed off. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes. A dark light flashed in his eyes. He glanced at the youth and said, "Get up. If you follow me closely, you won't even have a room to rest in." Having the ability to sleep while standing is quite convenient. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked outside. The old man glanced at the black-clothed youth and said, "Why aren't you following him?" Hearing this, Fengzhou quickly followed. When she walked out of the palace, she could even feel two sharp gazes sizing her up from behind. In the evening, in a pavilion, there were 8 delicious dishes on a stone table. The black-robed man sat there eating, and there were people holding chopsticks and small plates to serve him food. Seeing this, Fengzhou, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He really knew how to put on an act. However, when she smelled the aroma of the food, she couldn't help but take a deep breath. This was absolutely tempting. Look at the dishes. The rice was spirit rice, the vegetables were spirit vegetables, and the meat was spirit birds. This table full of food was placed in front of her, but she couldn't eat it. It was really a torture. It must be known that ever since she sneaked into the Dark Knight Temple's training ground, she hadn't eaten a good meal. It had already been several months. If they saw her, they would definitely say that she had starved and lost weight. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She really knew how to make herself suffer. Chapter 1871. Rumble. The sudden rumble caused the black-robed man's hand to pause. He tilted his head slightly to look at the black-robed youth standing upright behind him. "Number 9. Your subordinate is here." Fengzhou took 2 steps forward and came to his side. The black-robed man looked up and saw a mask covering the youth's face. He couldn't see the expression on the youth's face. Thus, he said, "Take off your mask. You don't have to wear a mask when you're with me in the future." "Yes." She took off her mask. Her handsome face was expressionless, without a trace of awkwardness. It was as if the rumbling from her stomach didn't come from her. The black-robed man put down his chopsticks and didn't eat. He just stared at Fengzhou, as if trying to see if there would be any awkwardness on his face. Rumble. Fengzhou pulled a long face and lowered his eyes. He didn't meet the black-robed man's gaze. However, just smelling the fragrance without eating made his stomach growl again. This time, even the person serving the dishes at the side was stunned when he heard this. "You're dismissed." The black-robed man indicated for the maidservant to leave. He then glanced at the young man who had narrowed his eyes and said, "You, serve me the dishes." Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. He braced himself and walked forward. "Master, which one do you want to eat?" she asked, staring at the food on the table. She felt that all of them were delicious. "Anything." As the black-robed man spoke, he raised his wine cup and took a sip of wine. Before he could swallow the wine in his mouth, he saw the young man use his silver chopsticks to pick up every dish and put them into the bowl. In a short while, the bowl was full. "Are you feeding pigs? Let's go." Seeing this, Fengjiu moved the bowl in front of him to one side and replaced it with another. This time, he only picked up a piece of crispy bone for him. "All right, feed the dog." The black-robed man ate slowly, as if he wasn't picky about food. He ate whatever Fengjiu picked for him, but he ate very little. He only took 2 bites of each dish and didn't want any more. After he finished eating, he walked around. After half an hour, he returned to his bedroom and asked someone to prepare water for his bath. At the same time, he tossed a bottle to Fengjiu. Fengjiu took a look and saw the words, "fasting pill," written on it. She sighed. She knew that she couldn't eat meat. She could only fill her stomach with fasting pills. When the black-robed man entered the inner chamber after her bath, she was ordered to guard the outer chamber. As a result, she was unable to step into the inner chamber, let alone take advantage of the night to scout around. There should be many people watching from the shadows in the inner chamber. She was even certain that there should be existences that were stronger than her. The next 2 days were peaceful. Nothing unexpected happened. However, she knew that number 1 and the others had been brought back. However, she had been following the masked man closely. Until now, she hadn't even seen what he looked like. But she knew that there were many strong people here. If she stayed here for a long time, even if she didn't meet with any accident, it was hard to guarantee that the others wouldn't be found out that they weren't poisoned by the heart-eroding pill. She sat on a pillar in the palace and looked down. On another pillar opposite her, there was a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged. That middle-aged man didn't even open his eyes, but his aura was concealed. It was obvious that he wasn't an ordinary strong person. Chapter 1872. This person was heavily protected. Even if they attacked, they would not be able to take his life. Moreover, even if Lei Xiao, Meng San, and the others were here, they could not suddenly attack without a perfect plan. Otherwise, they would suffer great losses. Furthermore, although she had been taken into the black-robed man's side as a personal shadow guard, the person in the dark seemed to still be on guard against her. Occasionally, the gaze that fell on her body would carry a trace of sizing up and probing, causing her to keep her body taut and not dare to relax. Perhaps when she dozed off that day, she gave them the illusion that she was not a threat. After all, she did not appear to be an absolute elite. Instead, she was more like a person of flesh and blood. She felt that it was because of this that the black-robed man had transferred her to his side. A black-robed man walked in from outside. He bowed respectfully and reported, "Master, Han Rong is here." The black-robed man, who was handling affairs at the desk, narrowed his eyes and closed the things in his hands. "Bring him in." At this moment, when Fengjiu, who was sitting on the pillar, heard the report from the person below, her heart couldn't help but move, and a dark light flashed through her eyes. If it weren't for her extraordinary temperament, she would have definitely revealed a flaw at that moment. Han Rong. Was it the same name? It should be. No matter what, that person should not have appeared here. She suppressed the surging emotions in her heart, restrained her aura, and sat quietly on the pillar. Then, she looked towards the entrance of the palace. When she saw a black-clothed man walking in with a middle-aged man, her eyes moved slightly. It was not him. It was not the Han Rong she knew. Well, if it was the Han Rong from back then, when he was expelled from the Crown Prince's residence by Xianyuan Mo's, his cultivation would have been destroyed and he would have been seriously injured. It was impossible for him to have survived. She was thinking too much. It was just the same name. However, what she saw next overturned her previous affirmation. "Greetings, Palace Master." Han Rong stepped forward and bowed. Then, he straightened his back and looked at the masked man sitting on the main seat. Even his master did not have a portrait of this person. No one knew what he looked like. It seemed that only the person he trusted the most knew what kind of face he had under the mask. "Why are you here again? What's the matter this time?" The black-robed man narrowed his eyes and asked lazily. "I hope the temple master will not be offended by my sudden visit. However, my master received a piece of news and sent me to the sacred temple." As Han Rong spoke, he saw a trace of impatience in that person's eyes. Without waiting for him to ask, he continued, "My master received news that although the Phoenix dynasty was destroyed and half of the Phoenix guards were killed, half of them were trained by Fengjiu to become strong soldiers. Furthermore, even Fengjiu's grandfather and father did not die." Hearing this, Feng Nine, who was sitting on the top, narrowed her eyes and stared at the people below. Han Rong, who was standing below, seemed to have sensed it. She looked up and naturally noticed the people sitting on the upper seats. His gaze swept past those few people, and he was secretly shocked. There were actually so many experts guarding the palace master. If it wasn't for the glance from above, he probably wouldn't have noticed the existence of these people.